In today's class, we'll discuss feminist theory and introduction. In this class, we'll try to understand the basic idea about gender and its feminist concerns around media, different issues regarding media, publication houses, different media houses, so on and so forth. Feminist media theory aims at reading, understanding, and making a critique of images and representations that exist in mainstream media, as well as experimental media. Let me first try to give you an understanding about what do we here mean by media. By media, we mean any form that represents cultural, social, political, news, information, creative things in terms of representation. This may include radio, television, cinema, theater, advertisements, print media, so on and so forth. We also have to understand that in present days, social media also falls under the purview of the media as a whole. Because through social media, through Web 2.0, post-Web 2.0 for that matter, we have social media, internet-based media, news, internet-based news, OTT platforms, etc. That also needs to be understood if we try to understand the present scenario of media per se. So whenever we talk about feminist media studies, we mean all these different areas where media functions and feminist concerns that tries to understand how these things function and work together. The feminist media scholarship employs feminist theories, ideologies, political concerns, policies by doing in-depth understanding and studies about media contents and form. Now here one has to be careful that it is not always about content that the feminist media theorists think about. They are not solely concerned about considering whether a particular media object, could be a film, could be news, could be any television program, whether it is feminist or not. This is not the concern. One text may or may not be feminist. Even then, feminist media theorists will have other concerns as well. So they not only talk about or try to understand what goes around in the name of filmmaking, media production, etc. They are also concerned about employment of women in media. They are also concerned about their salary, their leave, their pays, and different kind of work ethics, their rights, so on and so forth. So it's a vast thing when we talk about media theories. It includes form, content, stories, etc., how women are represented, etc. At the same time, it also includes the job, the market, how women are treated in media industry, etc. So simplistically put, feminist media theories take advantage of feminist theories and try to understand media scenario through those perspectives. I'll give you some concerns to begin with. What do I mean by these concerns? Feminist media theories go beyond the question of representation. As I said, that feminist media theory is not only about whether a woman has been rightfully represented or not. It is about so many other things as well. So I will give you some pointers. Feminist media theories deal with beyond representation. They also deal with appointment and job allocation of women. That means in any advertisement house, news productions, etc. Whether and how women get appointment plus their job allocation, what kind of work they are actually given. I can actually think about one job that used to be very much assigned for women in Hollywood was script girl. So the scripts and everything used to be sorted by women only. Like spot boy, so that job will be given to men only. So there used to be different jobs that used to be segregated by gender. So it is also a concern of feminist media theorists to also look into job allocation and appointment. Second concern, production and distribution of media house, how it happens, why it happens, whether there is any gendered concern to be thought about, etc. That is also a concern of the feminist media theorists. And the final concern is training and salary of women. Whether women are getting enough training, whether women get equal access to training and in other sectors of media houses, and also salary, whether they're getting equal pay for the same job, and other leaves such as maternity, such as health, so on and so forth. How these are dealt, whether it is dealt differently, these are the basic concerns of feminist media scholars. Now, feminist media theory addresses the question of gender and identity by making intersecting connection with other perspectives as well. So one is, these are the three concerns that I have just mentioned. There are other things that also feminist media theories take into consideration. So it is not only about just women, it is also about women with other intersectionalities. For example, women of different class, how they are treated. Women of different castes, how they are treated. Race, religion, nationhood, sexuality, even disability, how these are treated. I mean, so it's woman as a category is not just a pure category in itself. It in itself has different inclinations, different types, different variations, and different intersectional points it should be taken into consideration to understand what woman is. The feminist media theorists have noticed is that mainstream media always try to present woman in a quote-unquote natural way. And when we say that, we have to understand that mainstream media, that means it tries to reinstate the social values, the dominant social values only, the patriarchal dominant social values. That means how a woman should be, what is a natural way of a woman's performance, how a woman should behave, so on and so forth. Mainstream media follows that. It tries to present woman in a very natural way. This leads to some very rigid and old-age stereotypes. Now, if you try to understand woman only in terms of something called natural, woman is only understood in terms of kinship then. That means either woman is either a mother or a sister or a lover or a daughter. Woman in itself, through her own identity, don't exist in this kind of a situation, in this kind of society, in this kind of patriarchal way of seeing woman. Let me refer to the initial thinkers of feminism and media is Betty Friedan. Betty Friedan wrote a book called The Feminine Mystique in 1963. I'm reading out one or two quotations only from her book. Her concerns were mostly about suburban to urban population, where the society has already undergone a kind of an urbanization, a modernization, and etc. And in such a society, women's condition. And the other concern that Betty Friedan has is about how women are represented in popular magazines. So the first quotation, each suburban wife struggles with it alone. This struggle is, living, doing all the household work that she's talking about. As she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover material, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Club Scouts and brownies, lay beside her husband at night, she was afraid to ask, even of herself, the silent question, is this all? So this is how Betty Friedan is trying to see the new woman, and by new woman we mean the new woman of a new society, of an urban, modernized new society. How that in such a society, women has to do all the social, all the familial work. So Betty Friedan, at the same time, she also talked about how women are represented in popular media. She actually meant the sensational magazines of that time. So she writes, over and over again, stories in women's magazines insist that women can know fulfillment only in the moment of giving birth of a child. As I said, that these media, they try to present women in a natural way, as if the sole purpose of a woman is to give birth. That is one example. Betty Friedan points it out that all these magazines, they try to portray that as if a woman's life is only fulfilled if she gives birth. They deny the years when she can no longer look forward to giving birth. So post-menopause or women who's not giving birth, these women are never their concern. For these magazines, the ideal woman is only the one who can reproduce and have reproduced. In the feminine mystic, there is no other way for a woman to dream of creation of the future. There is no other way she can even dream about herself except as her children's mother, her husband's wife. So she says, if you can now compare these two quotations, in the first quotation she was talking about how women are living their lives, and she is also making a connection that even the sensational, the mainstream, popular magazines actually reinstate that life and claims as if that these are the women who who do all the household works and also reproduce, take care of children, take care of family, are the ideal ones. Any woman who doesn't fall into that as if are not women enough or good women, so on and so forth. Another feminist, Donna Allen. In 1972, she established Women's Institute for Freedom of the Press, WIFP. Now, what this institute used to do, they had a bulletin called Media Report to Women. So what they did was that they used to diligently publish about legal proceedings. I mean, feminist legal proceedings. That is, if any woman is suing a company, news corporations, their different policies, legal endeavors, etc. So things that are not conducive to women, things that are problematic for women, some cases that women are fighting against these houses, etc. So this particular bulletin of WIFP, the bulletin called Media Report to Women, used to publish that. They believe that women-centric media will help towards women's emancipation of power. So they believe that women should take the control, should be at the center of the media. They also believe that media is a male-dominated industry, hence only women media practitioners can challenge and correct the inaccuracies, distortions regarding gender-based issues published in media. So they believed that media not only sidelines women, they also misrepresent women. So more and more women will take part in media. So it is through their participation, women's in general representation will also be better. The misrepresentation, distorted way of presenting women will also be challenged by the presence of a media person who is a woman by gender. That is what they believed. We are seeing that Betty Friedan is thinking something, Donna Allen is thinking something. They are trying to think about what should happen in terms of media and women's participation, their representation, and etc. So now let's make a summary of that. That what are the different expectations of women in media? Expectation number one. If there are more women in control over media productions, the quality of the content can be more varied, innovative, and the representation of women can be more positive. Very initial feminist media scholars used to believe more and more women would participate in media industry, positive portrayal of women would be more. We'll get to see it more. Again, as I said, it's not only about representation, it is also about the workspace. So they also believe that with a female boss or a leader in a newsroom or in a publication house or in any media house will also create a difference in how that they believe that because women are already marginalized, they have their own ways of dealing with situations. So the nature of a newsroom, the nature of a workspace will be different if a company, a newsroom, or any production is led by a female boss. They also believed that different feminist scholars, as they pointed out, that with women in power, media houses may get more ethical in representing different sensitive issues. This is from the idea that because women are from a marginal group who have been historically oppressed, they can identify with the problems of other marginal groups in terms of caste, class, etc. So if women are taking charge, they would be more sensitive towards different marginal issues, oppressions, and etc. So the representation in news and media would be better of such situations. Again, with more women producers, reporters, and readers, women viewers will be addressed as proper real consumer. Because earlier feminists used to believe is that the mainstream media, the kind of news and production that they churn out, they do not consider women as the real consumer, as if they're objectifying women, they're mistreating women, they're misrepresenting women, etc. So if you consider women as your proper viewer, you will also have to create proper sensitive programs for them as well. And if you have women taking charge as the as behind the camera, behind the scene leaders, that is possible. Now, later feminists have argued if these are the expectations, there are certain problems with this expectation as well. That if you have this expectation, like if women are there, it will be more positive, women will only understand the problems of women, so on and so forth. Later feminists have pointed out that being rigid about these ideas may lead to, again, another form of stereotype, as if women are like this, and which is why if women take charge, certain things will happen. So they kind of talked about how different kind of women are possible, how woman as a category cannot be an absolute category. There are different other intersections. And it is not necessary that if a woman is the boss or if the woman takes charge, then only certain things can happen. Feminist perspectives on media. How feminism kind of sees media. Feminist media studies investigate the misrepresentation of women. These scholars could talk about characters in cinema which has been wrongly portrayed, or a subject in a painting which has been painted differently and objectively, sexualized, etc. A social being in news, how a woman is portrayed in news, how women's issues are narrated in news. Model in an advertisement, how they are represented, so on and so forth. Feminist media study is also interested in questions of representation and gender, how women are objectified, how women are overtly sexualized in mainstream media, how stereotypes are imposed upon them. These are some of the perspectives. To understand representation of gender, feminist media studies investigate different structure of power, that how family, societal, national issues are handled by this particular media house, or whether it has been accurately represented or not. Within the feminists, there are different debates. Now, one debate is around the reason for women's oppression. There are multiple ways this thing is addressed. If you ask why women are oppressed, different feminists will give you different reasons. Another concern is subordination. That is why women accept subordination, why women accept that they are inferior. Even that does not have one simple answer. There are multiple ways that one can think about resolving this question. Feminists are also conflicted. Some will say that, okay, women have internalized the fact that they are inferior in a patriarchal society. That is why they accept their subordination. However, other feminists will say that not only just internalization of patriarchy, there are also social, cultural, historical factors that made women inferior, and women also believe that they are inferior. Another debate which is very important for feminists to address is that how women's oppression should be resolved. We try to think more often that what should one do to resolve this problem? Again, there is no one way to answer this particular question. And most importantly, gender and identity. That we know that from third wave onwards, the question of gender become very important. The gender identities, sexual identities, LGBTQI communities, that man and woman is not the only two identities of gender. This needs to be addressed. And feminists post third wave and post 90s, these feminists have been talking about, arguing about it, that LGBTQI community should also be represented. And these debates and concerns also affected or had an impact on the feminist media studies. All these concerns are also the concern of feminist media studies. Women's representation is a concern of media studies. Why women are invisibilized is a concern of feminist media studies. How women's body is presented as a fetish object or as a sexual object is a concern. Not acknowledging queer identities is a concern for feminist media studies. And overall, whether women are properly represented, they're getting enough job, whether they're getting equal pay or not, this is also a concern of feminist media studies. Now, we'll talk about, because it's an introduction, we'll talk about two entry points We'll talk about media and its bias and how two different perspectives of feminism dealt with it. One is the initial, that is liberal feminist perspective, and the other is radical feminist perspectives. This is because it's introduction. Definitely a lot of work has happened after that as well. But this is an introduction. Media and its bias. So liberal feminist perspectives, what were their accusations against mainstream media? They used to say that mainstream media strengthened traditional sex-gender-based stereotype. They used to say that mainstream media maintain sex-gender-based stereotype because, one, gender discrimination in a society, mainstream media imitates that. Media manifests these discriminations and dominant social practices and values. 3, men dominating the media have internalized those values because they have internalized patriarchal values. That is why they also continue making these, patriarchal programs. Another concern or another accusation that liberal feminists had against mainstream media, that women's employment in media, including their access to position of power, is a constant problem. That they are not getting position of power, they are not getting enough job, etc. Also, gender division of labor, not the kind of job they want. Women's issues and their experiences have been ignored by mainstream media, another accusation. Even when women and their concerns are included, that sometimes, most of the times they're ignored, sometimes when women's issues are included, those are either trivialized or distorted by mainstream media. Women are mostly portrayed as private beings within the limits of family and society. Like a social agent, media rewards women for proper behavior. Now, this is also something liberal feminists pointed out, that in mainstream media, a good woman, there is an idea of a good woman in the society. Mainstream media also imitates that, and a good woman in a media content, could be cinema, could be anything, are always rewarded. A bad woman is always punished. These were liberal feminist accusations against media. Through their accusations, liberal feminists offered two solutions to this, media's gender insensitivities. One is that women should enter media as much as possible, media workforce, and gain more power. In that way, they can have more control over the content. And also, it may change the misportrayal of women, as we said. The other point is that media must represent both women and men, non-conventional roles. So media should not imitate what happens in the society. Rather, media should actually represent women and men in a non-conventional role. So these are the two avenues that liberal feminists thought could help mainstream media. Later critics have also pointed out that liberal standpoint also has some limitations. One is that they are very reformist in that way. As if liberal feminists are saying that if women are working, that means every problem will be solved. But that's not the case. Men and women are different, and because they are different, and social structure is that, only including women will change the image of women. That may not be the case. Again, the problem that Marxist feminists had with liberal feminists is that unless you attack the capitalist mode of production of media, just including women will not help. So as you can see, because there are different discourses, different perspectives, they also had their different types of engagement with these problems. And also, some believed that liberal feminist ideas kind of limit the roles of women. They limit the roles of women to good women only. There can be different other types of representations as well. And even when more women have entered this space, this is important that some people said later on that only women getting involved in workspace will not solve the problem, because that only increased another problem. That any media house where women are predominantly there, their salaries have gone down. So everything, as you can see, is interconnected. So a capitalist mode needs to be attacked. The salary, job allocation is important. Women taking charge is important, but it also has to ensure that if a woman takes charge, the salary doesn't go down. So all these things are connected. The next is, as I said, another thing that we'll scrutinize is radical feminist perspectives. We saw what liberal feminists did. Radical feminists attacked mainstream media in different way, not exactly in the same path as liberal feminists. For them, mass media are owned and controlled by men, therefore operate to benefit patriarchy. They are not talking about inclusion or anything. They are simply talking about difference. They are saying that mass media is controlled by men, which is why it is patriarchal. Because of a patriarchal setup, they believe that mass media only uphold patriarchal values. It's a patriarchal system, so it upholds only patriarchal values. Traditional family structure remains unchanged and sacred in this structure. Because it is patriarchal in media, traditional family structure also remains the ideal one. Normative heterosexuality is essential to mass media because society is patriarchal. Patriarchal society do not give access to any sexuality beyond man-woman. Mainstream media also does that. Now, you have to understand that society has changed a lot, but we are talking about the initial days where things were very rigid. Women insist of as aspiring to be equal to men, should figure out their own means of communication. So they believe that instead of trying to be like men, women should find their own voice, which is a voice of women. This is what radical feminists believed. So the limitation of radical feminists is that radical feminist media scholars do not consider difference within the category of women. They also were talking about women only. That this woman could be different, that a third world woman will have different concerns, a first world woman have different concerns, that the idea of a woman itself is very varied and full of differences. This is something the radical feminists did not consider. We have just seen the two perspectives, liberal and radical. This is our introduction to understand how feminism had seen from the beginning the problem and the concerns of media. So to summarize, these are the scholars that believe that mainstream representation of women were highly polarized. That is, either they were very naturalized and praised for being nice, good women, or they are ridiculed because of their other values. Feminists also believed that this binary of representation, good woman, that is saint versus the vamp, is to be broken, is to be challenged, right? And that the liberal and radical feminists gave different perspectives to combat these polarization. And from third wave onwards, as I just said, post-90s, third wave onwards, different issues and concerns were raised which were not as plain and simple as we see in radical or liberal feminism. Thank you.